In 1996, Sonic Team released a game called Nights into Dreams. Nights into Dreams' concept was a story of dreams and nightmares, a story of anxiety and overcoming, a story of flight without wings, a story about the mind and reality itself. The concept of Knights was originally thought up of as a character that could fly, and wasn't Sonic the Hedgehog. The idea eventually turned into a game called Nights into Dreams, a dream about flying and collecting. But this isn't like Kirby. This was meant to be realistic to actual dreams. The team conducted research on REM sleep and the psychology of dreams. The research that appears to have influenced Nights the most was the works of Carl Jung. While REM sleep and the works of Sigmund Freud were researched, their effects on Nights were less obvious and sometimes not even at all. Like, you could barely find Sigmund Freud's work in Nights. So that'll be mentioned last. So why am I telling you this? Well, today I'm here to tell you everything I know about the true nature of Nights into Dreams. Let's start with the surface level stuff, like our main character, the titular Knights. One thing you will hear is that Carl Jung had archetypes of the collective unconscious, something built into every human. One of these archetypes was the shadow, and it is commonly said that Knights is meant to represent this. The shadow is a part of a person that the person wants to deny. It fits with Knights. Knights in the first game is not what you would call a hero, so it really fits like a glove. With spiky teeth and an attitude that screams they want to be entertained first and want to save second. They're literally a nightmare, and people want to show themselves as perfect and without flaws, but Knights doesn't try to hide that. But this was lost in the sequel, Journey of Dreams. In Journey of Dreams, Knights was just kind of a goody two shoes most of the time, more of a wiser figure, and more of the other archetype Knights is associated with, the Eternal Child. Someone who's carefree and a hero of sorts. The original Knights shows traits of this, but Journey of Dreams Knights is pretty much only that. So I feel some depth was missing from Knights in that game. The Eternal Child can also be rebellious like Knights is, and I'm glad that part of their personality was preserved in the sequel. Riala is also like Knights, and is meant to show the negative sides of these archetypes. The Eternal Child is also needy and wants to be subservient and wants someone to be a leader for them. And this shows Riala perfectly. The Shadow is also fitting because he's a horrible person. His personality wasn't changed in the sequel, and he is still a monster. No one wants to be a monster. He's a jacked, menacing figure clad in red and black. He is not someone to be messed with. He also has the appearance of an outcast, someone who would not be the popular type, like an emo or a goth. He also doesn't think for himself, and that's also part of the Eternal Child. Knights and Riala feel like a duality, but they both manage to be unique in the fact they aren't polar opposites. Riala is red and Knights is purple. It's not a contrast. Knights and Riala's designs make them more similar than different, and I feel like that's truly what their personalities are like. And the ability to convey that personality in a character design shows that the designers behind this were some truly genius artists. The next most common thing you'll hear is that the two dreamers from Knights represent Anima and Animus. Anima and Animus represent the unconscious feminine side of a male and the unconscious masculine side of a woman. At first I didn't believe this, but paying attention to Elliot and Claris's character designs, you can tell. While they still do traditionally masculine and feminine things, they have elements to their designs that make them not 100% masculine or 100% feminine. With Elliot having eyelashes and Claris having a more masculine outfit, it isn't that noticeable at first glance, but looking at it further shows how detailed these character designs are and makes it truly make sense. But in the sequel, this was not attempted at all, not in the slightest. The next archetype is of two characters that represent part of the mana personality. The male side of the mana personality is the wise old man or the Senex. Wiseman is the obvious one. He represents the wiseness of it all and the megalomania that can result from that. The Senex can be a tyrant, and that is what Wiseman is clearly meant to embody, with his royal clothing and the jester motif with Riala and knights. Wiseman is the negative side of the wise old man, being cruel and crushing innocence. But the positive is the character known as Owl. He helps people on their way and he knows a lot. He is what Wiseman would have been if his hubris had not consumed him. I've also heard Wiseman being the ego, and it kind of fits with him being just overall egotistical, and that's what happens when the boundaries of a healthy ego are overstepped, resulting in megalomania. The final archetype that is actually in game and is proven is the persona. The persona is the identity someone takes up. It is fundamental to human interaction. Like a therapist is calm and collected when talking to a patient, but is not when talking to a friend. But one must not become a persona, or else they'll be shallow and sad. This isn't in the original Knights as much, it's barely mentioned, or not even mentioned at all, but it's the only thing handled well in the sequel. Persona masks can transform Knights when need be, but Knights does not use them all the time, usually using them when the situation calls, like a real persona in reality. But Riala is consumed by it and is always one, always wearing it, always consumed, always shallow, not happy. He is also trying to force Knights to wear a persona mask all the time like he does, trying to conform Knights to being only one thing, one person, and he's not even doing it of his own free will, but of the will of Wiseman. Control is something cults and dictatorships tend to do, and Riala is only obeying Wiseman, who is established to be a tyrant. Now on to theories and cut content. The final two archetypes I want to talk about are the self and the feminine side of the mana personality, the Great Mother. The one you probably have heard of if you've been in the Knights community for long enough is Self. Self is a cut character from Knights and is intended to be a boss after the final boss, and the Self personality reflects this importance. The Self is very complex. It is a unification of the two parts of the unconscious, and the fusion of the conscious and the unconscious. It is the final stage of self realization, and is the God image. It is everything. The self is unchanging. The self can cause a person to go megalomaniac and destroy the healthy boundaries of the ego. The self is divine and is a unity of opposites. The encounter with a self is apparently like encountering God. A person must retain the boundaries of the ego and the realization of the self. This reflects self as a final boss, the most important thing. But we don't know. It could have been the creator of everything. Well, we just can't know. It was never put in the game. But all we have is the song Know Thyself, which reflects self's importance. Here, have a listen. The other scrapped character was the Great Mother. She was scrapped of Journey of Dreams. We know even less about her. She would have been probably caring due to the fact she was the opposite of Wiseman, and the Great Mother archetype is caring and loving, while Wiseman is cold and cruel. That was all the archetypes that affect the characters. Now let's see how the dreamers' minds affect the world of Knights. The world of Knights is made up by the stages, the dreams you go to. They may seem to be simple stages in a game, but they are more. They're said to be experiences that the dreamer has had, made into a stage. The first game shows this by having things being close to reality, but not quite. stage with a car in it, but set in a forest, and a stage with snow and a magical train. This is actually accurate to real dreams, because in REM sleep, the brain recalls memory and makes dreams from those memories, combining them and making them like an AI image, and doesn't understand it's not quite right. This combination of dreams can mean things because they're based off of your memory. It is also said the levels in Nights were based on the main character's parents, but it doesn't show in the original game. But it does show up more in the sequel, where the main character's parents play a bigger role. But that game was kind of bad at doing this and misunderstood what the original was trying to do. The best example of this is the stage where everything is made out of glass and crystal, and that is fragile. So the dreamer has a fragile mental state, which is kind of obvious, and the fact they point it out just makes it bad. The stage could have worked, but instead it's a generic fantasy land with some connection to real life, but no connection with the character. Doesn't seem like something they've seen before. Just a fantastic castle right there. Ooh, Fantasyland. It could have been something they watched, but the game doesn't leave anything up for interpretation and just spells it out for you. The bosses in Nightmare are also in a similar category. They seem to be based on real things and experiences. The Nightmare enemies look like fish and other things that someone would find creepy or gross. And that's why they take on that appearance, because it has been shown they take the appearance as something the dreamer would find creepy. The bosses in the original game are also like that, with Puffy and the cat thing being possibly based off of bad experiences the dreamer had. The bosses could look different based off of the dreamer, but the only evidence of this was in Christmas Nights, where Puffy looks like Robotnik. Someone Sonic doesn't like because Sonic is the dreamer. And Puffy is also shown in Christmas Nights to be a real person, so again, it could just be the bad memories of a person, not actually bad memories, a nightmare in taking the form of bad memories. But I will not mention the sequel, because the sequel's Nightmares just look generic and boring with very little good designs, and the bosses just stole ideas from the first game, so I don't want to go in depth with those. I have no idea what Idia are meant to represent. They're just kind of colored orbs that you collect. It seems like something about dreaming in psychology, and but it's not really. It's more of a game design choice. Same thing with the Nighttopians. They really don't look like much, and the Dream Drop collectibles from Journey of Dreams and the other collectibles in game really don't mean anything and probably are just game design elements. The hub worlds and level select could be explained by going in and out of REM sleep, but I still don't know. The Void thing in Journey of Dreams could represent someone losing themselves in the final step of realization, but I really don't know. I'm really not in any way qualified to talk about this. I have forgotten to mention that Christmas Nights also has a seasonal thing. It's possible that the seasonal changes in Christmas Nights could just be influenced by the dreamer's day before sleeping. Christmas decor everywhere might make you more likely to dream about Christmas, and being surrounded by summer makes it more likely to dream about summer because those are your recent memories and are more likely to be recalled by REM sleep. That's about it for the video, and that's what all the things apparently represent in my mind. A lot of this was actually just being copied from the wiki and just me repeating it. A lot of thought was put into this world made by Sonic Team. It makes it truly feel like you were in a dream. This is probably the most well-crafted world in a Sega franchise other than Yakuza. Really makes you appreciate what Sonic Team did back in the day. Well, that's all for today. Tell me if I missed anything. Tell me if I messed up in the comments. Please do. I love getting hate comments because they help me improve. And make them actually constructive. Just don't make it, I don't like you, I don't like you, Make it actually constructive.